My girlfriend said. I need a partner who's already winning at life, not someone still trying. I smiled, wished her luck, and let her leave without resistance. A year later, she applied for a position at my startup without realizing the quiet guy she once mocked was now the CEO, reviewing applications personally. I need a partner who's already winning at life, not someone still trying to figure it out. She said it like she was reading it off a wall somewhere, like it was wisdom, like it wasn't aimed directly at me. I remember the exact moment. We were sitting in her apartment, the kind of overpriced place she'd picked because the zip code sounded impressive, and she'd been building towards something all evening. I just hadn't realized the target was my chest. She didn't flinch when she said it, didn't soften it, just let the words sit there on the table between us like a bill she expected me to pay. And I looked at her, really looked at her, and I felt something strange. Not heartbreak, not rage, something quieter, something that felt almost like relief. I didn't say a word. She took my silence as surrender. She was right about half of that. What she didn't know, what I had no interest in explaining to her at that moment, was that 3 months earlier, I had signed papers that most people twice my age never get close to signing. What she didn't know was that the thing she'd been dismissing as me still figuring it out was already in motion. What she didn't know was that her exit was the cleanest thing that was going to happen to me all year. I smiled, wished her luck, and walked out of that apartment without looking back. I didn't realize it then, not fully, but that moment changed everything. Not because losing her broke me, but because it freed something in me that she had been slowly pressing down for 2 years without either of us noticing. If you enjoy real stories like this, subscribe, because what happened next changed everything for me. We'd been together 23 months. I was 28, she was 26. We met at a rooftop event in the meatpacking district, which is exactly the kind of sentence that explains a lot about where things eventually went wrong. Her name was Vienna. She was stunning, sharp, socially magnetic in a way that made rooms tilt toward her when she walked in. And she had a very specific idea of what a man was supposed to look like when he was worth her time. I should have caught that earlier. I didn't. We worked for most of the same year. She was in brand consulting, high-end clients, expense accounts, the kind of job that looks incredible on Instagram and pays well enough to make you forget you're not building anything. I was doing something harder to explain at dinner parties. That was actually her phrase. You're doing something that's hard to explain at dinner parties. She said it once, laughing, and I laughed too because I thought she was joking. She wasn't joking. My co-founder Sinclair and I were building something in the logistics technology space, rethinking the last-mile delivery infrastructure for mid-sized commercial operators. It was unglamorous. It was technically complex. It didn't have a slick consumer app or a funny name or a celebrity investor she could mention casually. It was the kind of work that looks like nothing for a long time and then all at once looks like everything. Vienna did not have patience for all at once. She wanted right now. The cracks started showing around month 14. That's when she started making comments. Not big ones. Small ones. The kind that land soft but leave marks. My friend Calypso's boyfriend just got promoted to VP. They're looking at apartments in Tribeca. She wasn't asking me anything. She was just placing information near me, watching to see what I did with it. I ignored it. That was probably my first mistake, not because I should have competed, but because ignoring it meant I never addressed what she was actually saying underneath the surface. What she was actually saying was, I'm starting to measure you against other people and you're coming up short. I didn't catch it at the time. Looking back, it was there in every sentence. Month 17, she came to an investor meeting I'd mentioned. Not officially. She just showed up at the coffee shop where Sinclair and I were finalizing prep materials and sat down with us like it was casual. She watched us work for about 40 minutes. She didn't say much. When the investor, a guy named Rafferty, old money but sharp instincts, came in and the conversation started rolling, I watched her watch it. And I watched something shift in her expression. Not pride. Something more complicated. When Rafferty left, she said, he seems like he's doing you a favor. Sinclair looked at me. I looked at him. We didn't say anything. Later that night, she said, I just mean, how long are you going to keep chasing this thing before you admit it might not work? I told her it was going to work. She said, that's what people always say. Month 19, Rafferty's check cleared. We didn't celebrate in a way Vienna would have recognized as celebration. Sinclair and I sat in our cramped office space off Hudson Yards, a converted storage unit, basically, with good Wi-Fi and terrible lighting. And we looked at the funding confirmation on Sinclair's laptop, and we were just quiet for a minute. Then he said, okay, Now we actually have to build it. And I said, we've already been building it. And he said, no, now we have to build it fast. I didn't tell Vienna about the funding for 3 days. I'm not entirely sure why. Maybe I knew, on some level, that it wouldn't land the way it deserved to. When I did tell her, she said, how much? I told her. She was quiet. Then she said, is that enough? That was the question. Not congratulations. Not I knew you could do it. Not even genuine curiosity. Just, is that enough? I told her it was more than enough to get to the next phase. She nodded. She moved on to talking about her day. That was month 19. I don't think we were really okay after that. We limped through months 20 and 21. She got quieter. I got more consumed. We were occupying the same physical space and almost entirely different lives. She started going to events without mentioning them to me. I started staying later and later at the office. Neither of us said anything about the growing distance, which was, itself, a kind of communication. Month 22, she went to a friend's birthday in the Hamptons and came back talking about a guy named Octavian who worked in private equity and had a place out there. She didn't say anything explicit. She didn't have to. The way she mentioned him, 3 separate times, each time with that slightly too casual tone, was its own sentence. I let it pass. I shouldn't have let it pass. But I was tired, and I was busy, and some part of me was already preparing for an ending even if I hadn't admitted that to myself yet. Then came month 23. The last night. She'd asked me to come over, which felt deliberate. Her space, her terms, her timing. She'd made dinner, which was unusual enough that I noticed it. And we ate, and we talked about surface things, and then somewhere around the second glass of wine she got quiet in that particular way she had. The way that meant she'd been rehearsing something. I waited. I've been doing a lot of thinking, she said. I didn't respond. About us. About where this is going. About what I actually need. Still nothing from me. I need someone who's already there, she said. Not someone I'm waiting on. Not someone who might get there eventually. I need a partner who's already winning at life. Not someone still trying to figure it out. She looked at me like she expected me to argue. Or beg. Or crumble. I looked at the table. I looked at my glass. I looked at her. And something in me was just still. Not numb. Still. Like standing in a field before a storm and feeling completely clear. I smiled. It was a real smile. Not cruel. Not performative. Just the smile of a man who suddenly understood something very precisely. I hope you find exactly what you're looking for, Vienna. She blinked. That's it. That's it. You're not going to. No. I stood up. I put on my jacket. I walked to the door. You're really just going to leave? She said from behind me. I turned around one last time. She looked genuinely surprised. Maybe she'd expected a fight. Maybe she'd expected tears. Maybe, underneath all the posturing, she'd expected me to tell her she was wrong and spend the next hour proving it. Instead, I said, good luck with everything. And I meant it. And I left. I won't pretend the following weeks were easy. They weren't. Not because I missed her in some desperate, consuming way, but because 2 years leaves a shape in your life. And when that shape is suddenly gone, the absence has weight. There were nights I sat in the office long past when Sinclair had gone home, and I felt the silence of it. Not just her, but the version of myself I'd been while I was with her. The version that kept shrinking to fit inside her idea of what I was supposed to be. I hadn't even noticed how much I'd been shrinking until I stopped. It's strange, that feeling. Like taking off a coat you forgot you were wearing. 3 weeks after Vienna left, we had our first major commercial client sign. A regional distribution company out of New Jersey. Not glamorous, not newsworthy, but real revenue, real volume, real proof that the technology worked outside of controlled demos. Sinclair texted me at 11 p.m. when the contract came through, and I sat in my car outside our office, and I said out loud to nobody, there it is. Month 2 without her. We brought on 2 engineers from a competitor that had just folded. Brixton, one of our early advisors, made the introductions. Smart hires. The kind that shifted the velocity of what we were building in ways that were immediately felt. Month 3, a piece ran in a trade publication. Not a consumer outlet. Not the kind of thing that would make Vienna's friends text her. But the right people read it. The right people always read those pieces. By the time we hit the 8-month mark, we had 17 enterprise clients, a team of 22 people, and an offer on the table for a Series A that made Rafferty's early check look like pocket change. Sinclair kept saying, we have to hire. I kept saying, we have to hire right. The difference between those two things is the difference between a company that scales and a company that fractures. I had learned, by then, that fast and right are not the same thing. That patience applied strategically is not weakness. It is the mechanism. We built out a full HR process, structured interviews, technical assessments, culture evaluations, the works. For a company our size, it was unusual. Most startups at our stage are still hiring people they know, hiring fast, fixing problems later. We didn't do that. We posted broadly. We reviewed everything. And because I had strong opinions about the brand and operations roles, and because Sinclair had long since stopped arguing with me about which decisions were mine to make, reviewed the senior applications personally. Every single one. It was time-consuming. It was also non-negotiable. I remember the exact moment. It was a Tuesday. I was going through a stack of applications for a director of brand partnerships role, an important hire, someone who'd be client-facing and directly shaping how we presented ourselves to the market. I had a coffee, I had a playlist, and I was in that focused tunnel of just reading and flagging and moving through the pile. And then I stopped. I picked up a resume. I read the name at the top. I set down my coffee very carefully. Vienna. Same last name. Same city. The dates lined up perfectly. Her previous role ending right around the time we'd broken up, a consulting stint in between, and now this application. I read through the whole thing. Twice. She was qualified. Genuinely qualified. Her experience was real, her portfolio was strong, and the role was, objectively, a fit for her background. For a moment I just sat there. And then a very specific feeling moved through me. Not vindictive, not triumphant in any petty way. Just deeply, quietly amused. Because the company name on the application, the company she was applying to work for, was one she clearly hadn't connected to the person she'd once dismissed at a dinner table. We'd rebranded 6 months into our growth phase. New name, new logo, cleaner positioning. The kind of rebrand that happens when you're building something real and you want the outside to match the inside. She would have had no reason to connect the dots. Why would she? The quiet guy who was still figuring it out wasn't supposed to be here. Not in this chair. Not reviewing her application. I didn't tell Sinclair right away. I sat with it for a day. I went through the other applications. I slept on it. And in the morning I came back to it with the only question that actually mattered. What do I do with this? Not, how do I make her feel what I felt? Not, how do I use this moment? Just, what is the right thing to do here? I brought in our head of HR, a sharp, quietly no-nonsense woman named Elowen who had seen every flavor of workplace complexity and maintained her composure through all of it, and I laid out the situation. I know this applicant personally, I said. Previous relationship. It ended about a year ago. Elowen looked at me, and I want to make sure whatever decision gets made is clean. She nodded. Do you have a conflict of interest? I thought about it honestly. I don't think I'd hire her to punish her, and I don't think I'd reject her to avoid discomfort, I said. But I'm disclosing it anyway. Good, Elowen said. I'll run the process. You stay out of the direct evaluation. If she makes it to final round, that's when we talk. That's what we did. Vienna made it to the final round. On merit, Elowen ran her through 3 interviews. 2 other senior team members evaluated her separately. The feedback was consistent. Strong candidate, clear strategic thinker, excellent client-facing presence. Which I could have told them from the beginning. That was never the question. The final round included a meeting with me. That was standard for senior hires. Always had been. Elowen didn't tell Vienna who she'd be meeting. She told her it was the founding team. The day of the interview, I was already at the conference table when she was walked in. I don't know exactly what I expected. But what happened was, she walked through the door, made eye contact, and stopped. Just stopped. Like her feet had decided independently that they were done moving. The color changed in her face. Not dramatically. She had too much composure for that, but enough. There was a long second. And then she said, very quietly, "Oh, just that." "Oh." I stood up, extended my hand. "Vienna, thanks for coming in." She shook my hand. Her grip was steady. I'll give her that. We sat down, and for about 4 seconds neither of us said anything. Then I put the folder in front of me and said, "Your portfolio work on the Callahan Brands campaign was interesting. Walk me through the strategic positioning decisions on that." And she looked at me, and something moved across her face that I don't have a clean word for. And she said, "Okay." And she talked. And she was good. She was really, genuinely good. The interview ran 40 minutes. Professional the whole way through. No personal acknowledgement from either of us. No loaded glances. No subtext bleeding through the surface. Just a founder reviewing a candidate. just a candidate making her case. At the end, I thanked her for her time, told her Elowen would be in touch, and walked her back to the lobby. At the elevator, she turned to me, and for the first time since she'd walked into that room, she spoke outside the context of the interview. "I didn't know," she said. "I know. I wouldn't have. I mean, I didn't connect." "Vienna." She stopped. "The application was strong," I said. "Elowen and the team will make the decision. It's their process." She looked at me, and I saw in her eyes something I hadn't expected to see. Not embarrassment, not calculation about whether she'd gotten the job. Something more honest than either of those. Something that looked like the specific pain of being fully understood by someone you had once refused to see. The elevator opened. She stepped in. "For what it's worth," she said, just before the doors closed, "I was wrong." The doors closed. I stood there in the lobby for a moment. Then I walked back to my office. Elowen came to me the following afternoon. "The team wants to make an offer," she said. I looked up. "The technical fit is strong and the cultural evaluation was positive across the board," she said. "If you had no prior relationship with this person, would you make the offer?" I thought about it. "Yes," I said. "Then I'd recommend separating your history from the business decision." "I already did," I said. "That's your call." She nodded once. "Then we're making the offer." Vienna accepted. She started on a Monday in October. We were professional. We were appropriately distant in that way that works in an office when two people have a shared history that they've both decided to keep in a drawer. She was excellent at the job. The clients liked her. The team respected her. She did not need my validation to do any of it. She never asked for it. I never offered it. About 2 months into her tenure, she stopped by my office. End of the day, most of the team had already left. She stood in the doorway. "Can I say something?" she asked. "Sure. I've been trying to figure out how to say this since the interview, and I keep rewriting it, so I'm just going to say it plainly. I waited. I made assumptions about you that were about me," she said, "about what I needed to see to feel secure, and I dressed those assumptions up as standards, and I directed them at someone who didn't deserve it." She paused. "I'm not asking for anything," she said. "I'm not trying to. I just didn't want to keep working here without having said it." I looked at her, and I thought about the dinner table and the half-empty wine glass and the way she'd looked when I walked out. I thought about the storage unit office and the late nights and Sinclair's text at 11 p.m. I thought about the elevator doors closing. "I heard you," I said. She nodded. That's all I needed. She left. I sat in the office alone for a while after that. The city was doing its evening thing outside the window, the light going amber, the streets shifting into their after-work gear, the whole enormous, indifferent machine of New York continuing to run. I'd spent so long in this city being dismissed, being the guy who was hard to explain at dinner parties, being the person in the room who was still figuring it out, according to everyone who needed you figured out before they believe in you. And now I was here, in this chair, with this company, with this team, and Vienna was down the hall doing excellent work. And the guy from the Hamptons, Octavian from private equity, I had no idea what had happened there, and I genuinely didn't need to. Sinclair stopped by my office at some point that evening. He looked at me for a moment. "You look like you're thinking very hard about absolutely nothing," he said. "Pretty much." He sat down across from me. "You doing okay with the Vienna situation?" "Yeah." "Actually, yeah, or you don't want to talk about it, yeah?" I thought about it. "Actually, yeah," I said. He nodded. "Good hire," he said. "Good hire," I agreed. He stood up. "You want to grab food? Brixton's trying to get us to that new place on 10th. I closed my laptop. "Let's go." Here is what I know now that I didn't know then. The people who leave you because you're not winning yet are not wrong about needing what they need. They're just wrong about what winning looks like. Vienna needed visible proof. Titles, numbers, a Tribeca apartment, a name that landed well at parties. And I understand that. I don't hold it against her. But I also know, in a way I couldn't have articulated at 28, that the work you do in the dark, the years you spend building something that no one can see yet, the months you eat bad takeout in a storage unit convinced that what you're building is real, even though you can't prove it yet. That is not trying. That is winning. You're just winning on a timeline that not everyone is willing to wait for. And the ones who can't wait, sometimes they walk out that door. Sometimes you hold it open for them. And sometimes, a year later, they send a resume. And you read their name on a page. And you smile. Not because the tables have turned. Not because you've won some game. But because you remember the man you were in that apartment. The quiet one. The one who smiled instead of argued. The one who wished her luck and meant it. And you realize, that man was already winning. He just didn't know it yet. Vienna is still with the company. She runs the brand partnerships team now. She's built something real there. We don't talk about the past. We don't need to. The work is the conversation. And it's a good one. Sometimes I think about what she said that last night. I need a partner who's already winning at life. I think about it not with bitterness. I think about it the way you think about a sentence that was supposed to end something and ended up starting something instead. She was trying to close a door. She had no idea she was opening one. Some people leave your life making noise. She left mine making room.